At every stage of life, the question, what's next, seems to meet us head on. From early adulthood to midlife and beyond, each new chapter can be an opportunity to discover the beautiful future God has in store for us. This series is designed to help us as couples approach these transitions with faith, seeking purpose, rather than living in the past. We'll explore how God guides us through each stage, uncovering new opportunities to grow in our relationships, deepen our purpose, and discover what He has planned in every next we encounter. My name is Stone Eliezer. This is my wife, Mary Lee, and our good friends Ming and Sharon Sue. Our topic is marriage, and our title is Aquila and Priscilla, Aging Beautifully. In Romans 8:28, Paul writes, "We are confident that God is able to orchestrate everything to work towards something good and beautiful when we love Him and accept His invitation to live according to His plan." Marriage is where the deepening of both our convictions and our relationship connection can transform aging into a beautiful thing. Let's go to Acts 18 and introduce our couple we'll be using to set the inspiration for our discussion. In Acts 18, we pick up in verse 1, after Athens, Paul went to Corinth. That's where he discovered Aquila, a Jew born in Pontus, and his wife Priscilla. So, opening question. Not lost on me, the irony of putting both aging and beautiful in the same title. And I'm not unaware of what's looking back at me in the mirror. But did you guys have the same thought when you saw our title?
Most definitely. That was quite an ironic title.
Well, the last thing I'm thinking about is my beauty at this stage of life. I think I spend way more time thinking about my physical aches and pains.
So, Ming, since you are the baby of the group, what has the aging process taught you?
I mean, one of my favorite characters in the Bible is Caleb. He's 85 years old when he was asked, hey, you're going to enter the promised land. Is Caleb old chronologically? Definitely he's old at 85 years old, but I guess where his heart and faith is at, he probably had a different heart and faith than people half his age. I think the challenge is making sure that you don't age spiritually. I think that is how I think about age, because spiritually and mentally, I'm not quite there yet, but I definitely feel physically some signs of aging.
Hard not to notice the signs.
When I saw that topic of aging beautifully, I haven't been feeling very beautiful lately. Probably quite the opposite. And it's really easy sometimes as we get older and life gets more complicated and we have more health challenges, the negative thoughts can start circling in our minds and hearts. And so we don't always feel beautiful. We don't always feel fresh. We don't always feel young. But that shouldn't necessarily affect our faith.
Well, and I think that's the biggest challenge. Maybe it segues into the scripture that I had for this. It's in 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 16 through 18 in the ERV. It says, "This is why we never give up. Our physical body is becoming older and weaker, but our spirit inside us is made new every day. We have small troubles for a while now, but these troubles are helping us gain an eternal glory. That eternal glory is much greater than our troubles. So we think about what we cannot see, not what we see. What we see lasts only a short time, and what we cannot see will last forever." So it's been a great time in some ways of just working together and helping each other, because I know inevitably, physically, intellectually, there's going to be decline. But I think in marriage, if we work together, maybe we can outwit the whole chronological aging process, because we're growing together.
Well, it certainly, when we were reading out of Romans 8:28, it was talking about, God working out everything that happened in our life towards something good and beautiful. Mm-hmm. And so I know that the process of moving forward is learning how to forget things from yesterday, but to hang on to the lessons of yesterday. What are some of the lessons that you've learned over the years of marriage and working together? that has helped? And Marilee can jump in as well, too.
I think the first thing that stands out to me is that we need each other and that we really need to fight to be a team and a partnership. When I think of Aquila and Priscilla, you always think of them mentioned together in the Bible. And I sometimes wonder, do people think of Ming and I together, or do they think of Ming, or do they think of me? And I think they should think of us both, and we should be stronger together and being a team. It's not always easy, but I think it's something we have to work at.
Yeah, that's really good. I would like to insert a scripture here, one that I think has a lot in it. Philippians 2, 3 through 5 in the Passion Translation. Good. It says, "Be free from pride-filled opinions, for they will only harm your cherished unity. Don't allow self-promotion to hide in your hearts. In authentic humility, put others first and view others as more important than yourselves. Abandon every display of selfishness. Possess a greater concern for what matters to others instead of your own interests. And consider the example that Jesus, the Anointed One, has set before us. Let his mindset become your motivation." You know, we've been married over 40 years, and not that that's saying much. We would hope to have another 40, but
that's it.
You know, we didn't by any means. It has gone by quick. By no means did we understand the depth when we got married of our differences. Yeah. And Stone and I were both raised by two totally different role models. And while Stone was growing up, they showed a lot of loyalty and trust in their relationship. But on the other hand, I was raised, by a mom who was single most of my life, her life, I should say. And her teaching, her motto was, do not trust a man under any circumstances.
Especially
Stone.
That was new to me. We had to work that out.
We've had a lot of, that was a new one. So in our marriage, I would basically question Stone on every level. Of course, this led to a lot of misunderstandings and hurts and arguments. And, it can definitely still affect us in many ways. But because of this difference in others, Stone and I can drift apart and be motivated by our own individual agendas and interests. And that ends up leaving us very disconnected and distant. We don't want to build division, so we have to really work together. And Aquila and Priscilla were seen as a couple making impact together, as we've already pretty much mentioned. So having a friendship, being close of heart, knowing how each other is doing, it really does take effort. It takes a lot of effort on all of our parts. And without that effort and being intentional in this, we will only drift apart. And the relationship becomes superficial.
I remember we were dating, and she was driving this 1972 powder blue Super Beetle convertible. And the brakes were squeaking. So I said, "Hey, give me your keys. I'm going to go get your brakes checked out." And her response was, Have you ever done brakes before? Do you know anything about brakes? And I was so shocked by the question, like, I've never had anybody ask me that. I would not be how my mom and dad. That was not how my mom and dad operated. My mom would okay, hand it to. And so we had to learn how to work through things. But it didn't help that as my character was, I was terrible at listening. And I was reminded of the scripture in James 1, verse 19 says, "Understand this, my dear brothers and sisters, you must all be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to get angry." I do think that to build a partnership in over 40 years, we've had to learn how to be influenced by one another. That didn't start out, as Marilee was pointing out, it didn't start out that way with us. I know for me it means being quick to listen is how I get influenced, right? But my default response is usually being quick to share my opinion, or quick to react defensively, or quick to want to fix it. So no emotions are being expressed. Point is, I'm quick, all right, but not quick at listening. And that led to a lot of challenges in our marriage, but it also made me very ineffective with the kids as well. And I got humbled because I think God had to take times of failure and ineffectiveness to get me to listen. Yeah. My oldest daughter, when she became a Christian about a year after, she started struggling. and decided she wanted to walk away from God. But part of that decision was her frustration in her relationship with me, which she felt like the entire relationship was centered around her behavior.
Yeah.
And so in her mind, we didn't have a relationship. To be fair, most of my conversations with her were, did you do your homework? Did you wear your retainer? Did you have your quiet time? And very little about wanting to know what her heart was. Mm-hmm. And so I was not a listener. And when she left, it was a humbling experience. And it had to be, and Marilee had to point out to me that my relationship with her was much different than the one I had in my head. Mm-hmm. You know, that experience was a gut check level difficulty experience. And, you know, it taught me that I had to relook at how I built relationships, learning that listening and caring about what other people think and what's in their heart matters.
I'd love to share scripture that challenges me, actually. It's in Hebrews 6, verses 10 through 12 in the New Living Translation. It says, "For God is not unjust. He will not forget how hard you've worked for him and how you've shown your love to him by caring for other believers as you still do. Our great desire is that you keep on loving others as long as life lasts, in order to make certain that what you hope for will come true.
Yeah.
Then you will not become spiritually dull and indifferent. Instead, you will follow the example of those who are going to inherit God's promises because of their faith and endurance." Wow. This is a challenge for me, I think, because even though we could joke and say Ming's the baby, we are kind of a little bit younger here. We're kind of venturing into this new stage of life.
Yeah.
We do have a daughter who's married, a daughter in grad school, and a son who's a senior in high school.
Yes.
So we're not quite empty nesters yet, but we're heading in that direction.
You're a few months away.
Just a few months, but we're hanging on for dear life. But we've been Christians for over 30 years.
Yeah.
And we've led for over 30 years. And so sometimes as we get older and life gets more complicated, I kind of feel like I want to slow down.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm tired. I want to be done.
Yeah.
I want the new generation to take over.
Yes.
And I think it can be a challenge to want to continue to obey the scripture. The scripture says that we're supposed to still love people,
right,
as we still do. And we're supposed to love others as long as life lasts.
Yes.
That's
be a long time.
Till the very, very end. We can't stop. And Priscilla and Aquila, we don't exactly know how old they were. It doesn't say. But we should just be as hospitable. We should just be as serving. We should just be as denying ourselves at any age that we're at. It shouldn't matter.
Yeah.
But I know it's a challenge as we get older to feel like I want to be done. Mm-hmm. I want to break. I want to focus on other things in life. I want to have a little bit of a vacation or a retirement or a way out.
Yeah.
But I think the temptation is we have to fight to keep going.
I think as I get older, the temptation is desire to want more control.
Yeah.
So that I can do more of what I want to do when I want to do it. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's because you do fatigue a little bit easier. Yeah. But the big part, I think, is oftentimes I'm fighting that temptation to want to do what I want to do when I want to do it.
Right.
And loving people and caring about people means you live a disrupted life.
Right.
And I think sometimes we want to fight against having to live a disrupted life, but that's the life of love.
Yeah.
And I have to remind myself of that because I do get at times internally going, how do I take back control of my life so I can predict what's next? I think there are some times when we just don't admit that, that's really the battle that we're facing. And so aging beautifully, I think maybe more is a picture of continuing to love people.
I was thinking about what are the challenges as we get older, particularly in marriage, and it's just not quitting on one another because after you've known someone for 30 or 40 years, you kind of know who they really are, and it's so easy to quit and stop kind of helping each other figure something out or figure what's new that they can pursue. And I think bitterness is always, a challenge, whether it's bitter because of how someone responds in a certain situation over time or, health issues.
Lack of change.
Not
listening.
And just fighting.
Not listening.
have a list.
Go ahead.
She has a list of all the things I do, and I'm grateful.
Subliminal advertising right there.
I'm grateful that people don't quit on me.
Yeah.
And I do believe that you can teach an old dog new tricks.
There you go.
And rather be cynical and negative and believe that people can't do it. Now, there's so many examples of people in the Bible of chronologically they're older, but they continue to change. And I think that's the thing that I kind of hold on to, that, it's just, there's greater things down the path. Our first act doesn't have to be our best act. The second act can be better than the first act.
Yeah.
And I think if we quit, we'll never get to that second act. There's so many examples in the Bible where people's second acts were better than what they did when they were younger.
Do you think that people are aware that they're quitting, or do you think sometimes people just get bitter, and their bitterness, they've quit in their bitterness?
I think it's easy to slowly drift away. I mean, I think just like that scripture said, that we can become dull and indifferent.
Yeah.
I think it's not always dramatic. Sometimes it's stop wanting the motivation to go to places, or you're not excited anymore, or it becomes a grind, or you're dreading certain things. So it's not as dramatic.
Sure.
But I think when we're not honest with each other, like I know this past year has been hard for me, and I've been more depressed and discouraged and exhausted from not sleeping, and there might be more physical issues, but it's affected my faith.
Yeah.
And so sometimes it's those subtle moments that creep in that you don't talk about.
Yeah.
And so you don't necessarily quit 100%, but you're half-heartedly, religiously moving forward.
Yes.
And it's not fun, and it's not enjoyable.
Right.
And I think we all want to be fruitful later in life. We don't want to just do the bare minimum. Yeah. But I think it's easy to kind of slowly drift away.
I also think that, I've really struggled with a lot of fatigue this past year and a change of life and stuff. And I think, I can feel guilty if I can't do it all. But I love the scripture that you read, because really what it comes down to is finding ways to love somebody.
Yes.
And not quitting on that.
Right.
And so sometimes it's just how many, who can I text? Who can I encourage over? Who can I call today? Who can I reach out to? Who can I go to lunch with? And so I've had to modify some of my expectations, even on myself. I can contribute regardless of how limited I might feel at times. Right. So I know that's where it's kind of hit me.
Well, I mean, I think also constantly just not giving up on dreams, on godly dreams.
Yeah.
I mean, I know we've talked about the planting in San Jose and other places, but even thinking about doing something completely different. And I think it's so easy to trade something in for something you wanted in the past, like a life of leisure or a life of travel, but still just really believing that, we can have a real purpose and change people's lives. I think that keeps people going and excited, and just helping each other, in a marriage, that when someone's not doing well, the other person can take up the slack and have the faith and have the strength. And it's going to be other times where I'm going to need, as usual, need a lot of help. But in this case, just trying to be more encouraging, giving more faith, and being more inspiring. So,
And that goes right along with Priscilla and Aquila. When Paul met them in Corinth, they were refugees from Rome. They had been kicked out. All the Jews had been kicked out by Claudius Caesar. And but they were known as somebody who led a house church in Ephesus. And eventually, when Claudius passed away, they moved back to Rome and lived and led a house church in Rome. And they were constantly hospitable, but their life was always about others. And so what made them a couple that we can admire and to be like is that they constantly were using their marriage and their home to build relationships and to become a pillar, of stability relationally for people around them. Okay, well, that wraps up our time, and we appreciate you all joining us. And thank you to Ming and Sharon and Marilee, and enjoyed the conversation. We hope that you guys enjoyed it too, and we hope that you get a lot out of it.